So price and value, probably the first thing, especially in the back to school season, when we get a lot of families that have never played or had a violin or an instrument in their family, they're looking for an instrument for their child to play. They'll call around and they'll ask different shops, what have you got and what's your program? But the question they always ask is, what is the price? How much is it going to cost? And I'm proud to be able to say that our answers are always competitive, but I also always feel like that's maybe the last question they should be asking. And what we really pride ourselves on is offering high value in our rental program. Value and cost are not the same, or value and price are not the same. So when we talk about value, value is how much you get for every dollar that you spend. And in our opinion, when you spend $1 on our rental program, you're getting a lot. You're getting a lot more than what most programs offer. So the problem is, or the hard part is for a consumer, is that the rental programs can be complicated. And the more choices that we offer, the more choices that you have, the more complicated it becomes. So the rubric of just what is the price, that only tells you a little bit of the story. There's a lot more that you need to understand to really understand whether you're getting a good value out of your rental instrument. So for example, most programs offer equity along with the rental program. So if you're in a rental program that has no ownership component to it, then you're totally in the wrong program. You're just going to pay rent and you're never going to get anything for it. But different shops structure their equity accrual differently. So it's not uncommon, for example, for a rental program to have a very large equity base for a short period of time. So maybe 6 months or a year, you get 80 or 100% equity. That means 80 or 100% of the rent that you pay can be used towards purchase. But after that period of time, it drops to a very low amount, like 20%. Well, that's not very helpful because over the years, it takes a long time. You move through a lot of different instruments. Pretty soon, you have put in a lot more rent than you have instrument, and you've paid more and more and more. In our program, it's a 2/3 equity program for as long as you want to rent. So you're always building equity at a solid amount, and you're only going to pay 30% in total payment over the purchase price, no matter how long you rent. That works out to really favorable terms for you as a consumer. And you get for that really great instruments. We invest more in our rental instruments than a lot of shops. Not only do we work with really wonderful instruments, most of our instruments come from Eastman Strings, which is easily the top of the totem pole for student instruments. We offer lots of different levels of instruments: prelude, concert, premier instruments. You can rent a prelude, which is a really great place to start, or you can rent a premium, which is almost a professional instrument. And you always get this 2/3 equity component to it. And you can move through these instruments. You can start with one, move to another. I think the violin, truth to be told, is not the easiest instrument to get started on. I think other instruments can be a little simpler and be a little easier to learn on, but the violin is challenging. If you have an instrument that is hard to play, the action, the height of the strings is off, or the angles are incorrect, or the pegs don't work properly, all of these things can be really frustrating. And what you really want is an instrument. You don't want your child to be held back because the instrument is inadequate. So when we look at the violin world, violins are complicated instruments as well. So we want our instruments to have a high value. We're not trying to be just the cheapest instrument on the market, on the block. A cheap instrument we sometimes call, like a really cheap instrument that's hard to play, terrible wood, piano wire strings, action that's not usable. We call these instruments violin-shaped objects because they look like a violin, but they have so many problems that they can be really, really hard to play. And the violin is not the easiest instrument to start off on. And if you have an instrument that doesn't work very well, you're going to be frustrated. And from a business point of view, it does not make sense to sell an instrument that is going to be frustrating. You're not going to keep with it. You're not going to be a long-term customer because you're not going to be playing for very long. If an instrument's really well made and well played, you're going to love the violin. You're going to love the music. You're going to love what you can do with the instrument. And those are the instruments that we want to put in our rental programs and the people's hands that are renting from us. We also, on our concert and premier instruments, we also use Wittner Perfection pegs. These are fine-tuning pegs that make the tuning of the instruments so much easier than the friction pegs. So most instruments have friction pegs that loosen up and they don't hold well, and are difficult to tune. We use perfection pegs where you can fine-tune right in the peg box along with the fine-tuners on the tailpiece. And these are just some of the things that we do. We also add value to the program by putting add-on value. We have what we call our Prodigy Rewards program. Every rental client is automatically enrolled in a special VIP program called the Prodigy Rewards. This gives them a 10% discount on all the other things that you need along with the instrument. So if you need sheet music or rosin or shoulder rest, all those things are discounted for our rental clients. Replacement strings, free shipping, all that kind of stuff is incorporated in the Prodigy Rewards program.